Good evening to all of our listeners and viewers to this program. It's another wonderful Thursday evening here on the island of Nevis. It's also the evening when we bring to you our very informative program, which we have dubbed Government at Work. It's a program brought to you by the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration and hosted by yours truly. We look forward each week to bringing to you the information as it pertains to the development of the island and people of Nevis, whether it be through the Ministry of Tourism, Education, Culture, or Agriculture, to name a few. There are positive signs of growth taking place in all areas of our economy, and each week we make the effort to highlight at least one of those areas to ensure that you are kept abreast of all of the developments taking place here on the island of Nevis. This program is broadcast live on BON Radio every Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Then we broadcast on Nevis Television on Sunday evenings from 8:30 p.m. As always, I remind you as well that our popular Buzz Early program is aired every Tuesday evening on Nevis Television at 7:15 p.m. Then we broadcast on Wednesday evening at the same time. We shall take a short break, and when we return, I shall introduce my guest for this evening program to you. So stay locked down to the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, BON Radio 860 AM.
So rise, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Rise, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
I am pleased to have as my guest this evening Premier the Honourable Man A.G. Brantley. Honourable, it's always a pleasure having you on this program, because I am told that not only the rating goes up, but a lot of unknown information is disseminated to our listening and viewing audience. So good evening and welcome to our Government at Work program once again.
So Scarborough, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here as always.
It's a pleasure having you. Before we go into our discussions, Honourable, this evening, there are two matters that I wanted you to shed some light on for us. The first being that you recently traveled to Spain with a group of local entertainers as part of the marketing efforts of the NTE, the Ministry of Tourism as well. Could you shed some further light on that trip for us as how it all unfolded?
So we led a large delegation for Nevis' standards to Tenerife, which is one of the Canary Islands. And if the public is asking why on earth are we going to Tenerife, it's because there was a very large group of about 650 affluent African Americans who were assembled in Tenerife and having their retreat there. And Nevis was able to partner with them. And so we had a captive audience of some 650 or so very wealthy African Americans. We realize that there has been a gap in our tourism marketing, that we are not appealing to sufficient African Americans who, as we know, are a very wealthy demographic. They are largely in the eastern corridor of the United States, New York, Boston, Connecticut. These are areas, New Jersey, that we cater to, that we market in. But when we look at the profile of our visitor, we realize that we are leaving that particular segment of the market untapped. And so, because Nevis is a high-end jurisdiction, it is, of course, a very exclusive and expensive jurisdiction, we thought that we wanted to appeal to the affluent African-American community, and that's exactly what we did. We were afforded that opportunity through some connections that we had made, and so we traveled. I will tell you that they were blown away about Nevis. We had a band there, I think it's called IV. They performed fantastically. The ratings were incredible. We did a beautiful silk scarf that was branded Nevis for the ladies. We had some rum, Nevis local rum, that we gave away to the gentlemen. We, through the partnership with Four Seasons, raffled a trip to Four Seasons, and they were very, very overwhelmed. I had the opportunity on one of the nights, the gala night, to say a few words, and certainly I'm proud to say that we're already seeing returns, because we have some visitors from that group who will be arriving here on the 20th of May. And what I like about this group is because they are wealthy African Americans, they're also very keenly interested in investment. So they're looking to buy homes, they're looking for hotel and property and real estate investment. And so we had some very good conversations, and I'm very optimistic that this group will lead to other things. As one of them said to me, he said, "You're in the company of 650 millionaires." And I said, well, that's a good company to be in. Yes.
Thank you for the update on that. And secondly, there was a groundbreaking ceremony at Nelson Springs near the location where Coconut Grove used to be. That ceremony took place on Tuesday, and according to reports, a number of luxury villas is to be constructed when the project is completed. Could you shed some further light on that process?
So this is the new developer, Platinum Developments. They have been quietly doing the build-out stage. What I like about them is that they will be building at the ultra-high-end section of the market. So when they're done, I anticipate that their villas will be priced somewhere around 7 to 10 million US dollar mark. There's nothing currently on the island that is being offered at that rate. They anticipate building 2 to 3 villas, but as I said, these villas are going to be ultra luxurious villas. Based on the architecture, based on the partnerships that they have in place, based on the new technologies, which I'm very excited about because, for example, they're not using traditional steel construction. They're introducing some new technology to the island, and I was very pleased that at the groundbreaking we had companies like TDC and those present to look at this new technology to determine whether or not that could inform construction here on the island of Nevis and in the wider federation going forward. One of the good things about this new technology is that it is not susceptible to sea blast. And we know that steel, regular steel, sometimes even inside buildings, can be subject to corrosion, and which affects the strength and the durability of buildings. And so we are quite pleased with this. The investor is somebody who's well known to Nevis. He has been here and spent time here and has owned property here for some time. And I think based on the confidence that he has in what he's seen, he's now decided to take that additional step and to engage. And I was very happy to see that the main contractor is Surrey Paving, which is a Jamaican company but has been here for some time. But all the other subcontractors are individuals from right here in terms of air conditioning, plumbing, electrical, as the case may be. So everybody was there, and I think we look forward certainly to a new development. I just want to say very briefly that we are seeing a flood of investment coming to the Nevis, both local investors and foreign investors, and people invest where they have confidence. And that, for me, is a sure sign that we're moving in the right direction.
Sure. Any idea when the time frame, expected date of completion?
Well, they're going to do the initial villa, which they said is going to be sort of a spec home. This will be their marketing showpiece, and they're indicating that they expect that they're starting now and that should be finished by the end of 2024. So the build-out period looks like it's going to be about 16 to 18 months.
The Honourable, I want to go into our main discussion this evening, and I want to start this evening's discussion looking at some matters at the federal level. I want to start with the hot topic of the free movement of people. I want to believe that Nevis needs an increase in its population size. So I was thinking that if this free movement was to become a reality, it gives us the opportunity to increase our numbers. But then I remember that immigration is a federal responsibility. I mention all that to ask you this question: what if your CCM Nevis Island Administration decides when or if this freedom of movement becomes a law, to allow a certain amount of persons to come to Nevis to live and perhaps work? Would you need federal permission to do that?
So I think that we need to set the parameters very carefully about what we are talking about. Because if you have freedom of movement, there are no quotas. If you have freedom of movement, you have freedom of movement. So it's not as if we can say we have freedom of movement and Nevis will allow 500 people. If you have freedom of movement and 10,000 people decide to come, then we can't stop them from coming. So I want to make that very clear. So the basis on which your question is premised presupposes that we have some control. We don't. We don't. Once you sign on, you sign on. And that is why I have been hesitant. Remember, and I believe our viewers and listeners need to remember, that we already have free movement within the OECS. Yes. In fact, right here now in Nevis, you will see that we have a large number of OECS brothers and sisters moving to Nevis, taking up jobs in Nevis. You go up to the call center in Brownhill, you go to some of the restaurants, you go to Four Seasons, you see quite a large number of OECS nationals. You go to the Bank of Nevis, right? People are coming in and taking up positions because we have freedom of movement. So that means, just so the public understands, they don't need a work permit, they don't need any permission. Once they land, we say welcome, they're here. Similarly, because it's reciprocal, if we decide to go to Dominica, St. Lucia, Antigua, Grenada, St. Vincent tomorrow, once we land, they say welcome, and we go about our business. We work, we drive, we buy property, we do all of that. So that is the OECS model. So that is already in existence, and we are already seeing a net migration. Truth be told, we're seeing more people gravitating towards Nevis than necessarily Nevisians gravitating towards, say, the Windward Islands. The wider question, however, of freedom of movement has to do with the CARICOM question. Because, again, your listeners and viewers will understand that CARICOM is a much larger space than the OECS. The OECS, so to speak, is the small islands. CARICOM now is the big islands. So you have Jamaica, you have Haiti, you have Barbados, you have Guyana, you have Trinidad and Tobago. Haiti alone has somewhere in the region of 11 million people in Haiti. In fact, Haiti alone has more people than the rest of CARICOM combined. So, my hesitance has to do with the very real possibility that if we were to move to full freedom of movement, then little islands like Nevis can be quickly overrun. I tell people all the time that, if 10,000 Nevisians were deciding tomorrow to move to Jamaica, Jamaica probably wouldn't notice. But if 10,000 Jamaicans decided, let us move to this little place called Nevis, overnight, our healthcare system, our school system, our housing infrastructure, our electricity, our water, overnight would collapse. So I am thinking that for the smaller islands, the microstates as I call them within CARICOM, that they have to have a carve-out which allows them some quotas in terms of how many people they can accommodate. Simply because physically, infrastructurally, and as a practical matter, we simply cannot cope with hundreds of thousands of people coming to our shores. So I feel that our leaders, and of course this is being done at the federal level, but Prime Minister Drew and his team need to be cautious about their approach in relation to the wider freedom of movement question in terms of CARICOM. Within the OECS context where it already exists, we have to remember that most of the OECS countries are, by and large, Nevis of course is very small, but by and large they are of similar size. In the context of CARICOM, however, that is not the case. And so we have to be prudent and sensible. Trinidad has over 1 million people, Guyana has nearly 1 million, Jamaica has over 2 million people, and Haiti, as I said, has close to 11 million people. So when we start to think about movement, we have to be sensible and practical and understand it cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach. And that has been my argument, and I'm hopeful that those within the corridors of power regionally listen to that argument, because I'm talking about the context of a microstate like St. Kitts Nevis, but even larger states like St. Lucia and St. Vincent, their infrastructure couldn't sustain it either if they had a large influx of people.
How much of an influence you think your appeal, Dr. Drew's appeal, and the Lesser Island appeal has on that decision? Well,
these decisions have to be unanimous, yes, because, of course, CARICOM cannot impose on any of their countries. You may not know, but for years the Bahamas has not signed on to freedom of movement, right? So you can have a carve-out. So it is really for each of the countries to determine what their carve-out is going to be. Now let me add, Mr. Scarborough, that within the CARICOM context, we already have limited freedom of movement because we have something called the CARICOM Skills Certificate. What they've done is they've said for certain categories of workers, entertainers, for example, healthcare workers, those can move freely within the region without a work permit. What we have not done is gone the full gamut in terms of freedom of movement, as we have done within the OECS. So we have categories of workers now within CARICOM that move, and that allows us an element of control, right? But outside that, I think that we need to be cautious simply because, and I want people to understand this is nothing against Caribbean regionalism or integration. It has nothing to do with the benefits that can flow. I just think it is a practical reality of our small size and very, very fragile infrastructure here. And when I say infrastructure, I mean the whole gamut: roads, water, electricity, schools, hospital, healthcare. All of those are relevant.
Agreed. Let me ask you a hypothetical question. If or when this does become reality, what amount of persons would you be comfortable with residing here on the island?
It's difficult to say, and you did say it's hypothetical, and it's always dangerous to try and answer hypothetical questions. What I will say is that Nevis does need people. I'm going to agree with you 100% on that. As government, it is very difficult to plan. Your tax base is very thin. There's simply not enough persons here. Right now, for example, Social Security has reported to us for the last year and a half or 2 years that we have more jobs than workers. So what is happening is that some people are working 2 and 3 jobs because there are more jobs available on the island than workforce. We are having a lot of complaints from employers who are saying they cannot find workers. So there's a very real opportunity for us to grow the population. I always use the example of Bermuda. And I tell people that Bermuda, which I believe is only about 21 square miles or something like that, has over 65,000 people living there. Nevis is nearly twice the size of Bermuda, and we're struggling to get to 13,500. So Bermuda has close to 5 times our population when it is half our landmass. When we go to a place like the Long Point Port, and we go to the south of the island, thousands and thousands of acres unoccupied, not one soul over there. And that is the kind of opportunity I think that exists. People lead to consumption, people lead to development, people widen the tax base, people increase your talent pool. We need people to grow the island. And so I am not sure what the number would be. That would be a matter for people who are far wiser than me. But I do know that we need more people. And I'd be very comfortable seeing more people, especially professionals, coming into the island and helping us to grow and develop. When we look around this island, Mr. Scarborough, we see the Guyanese population has come. The Dominicanos have come from Dominican Republic. We see now our brothers and sisters from the OECS territories, particularly the Commonwealth of Dominica, who are coming. We see persons from Jamaica who have come. And in my humble opinion, and this is my opinion, I think that they've contributed to the growth and development of the island. When you go into a community like Cane Garden and you see the number of Guyanese persons who have settled in that community, you look at the quality of the housing, you look at the businesses that they have formed and they're into, you realize that Nevis has been better off because we have been able to bring people in. And this is the story of immigration. The U.S. Virgin Islands, they may not like to hear me say so, but they were better off because people from St. Kitts and Nevis went there to work and to grow and develop, right? New York and those places, the United States of America, was built by immigrants. So we ought not to fear it. I think what our people need to do is prepare themselves, ensure that we get skilled, we acquire our skills and our training, and that we are prepared to work hard and prepared to seize opportunities in our own country.
Well, the issue of the CBI sharing, Honourable, is once again being talked about. According to the Prime Minister, early in his term, he reached out to high-level financial organizations for assistance with this CBI matter, especially as it relates to the fee share between St. Kitts and Nevis. I understand that that report is now in the hands of the Prime Minister, but we are yet to hear the full contents of that report. Are you in a position to shed any light?
I have not seen the report. The Prime Minister has indicated the last time we spoke on the matter that the report was imminent. He did not tell me that he had received it. Perhaps he has by now, because that conversation was perhaps about 6 weeks ago. I am waiting patiently. I believe that I ought to give him the benefit of his word. He did say that we would work this through. The relationship has been a cooperative relationship thus far. I must say that certain things have been initiated, such as the joint cabinet meeting, which has worked well. We've had the first one thus far. We intend to have a second one very shortly, I think in the month of June. And at that cabinet meeting, certainly it is our intention to raise this issue, because the Prime Minister is now in August going to be 2 years as Prime Minister, and I believe that this, which was a major political issue and continues to be a concern insofar as St. Kitts and Nevis is concerned and the relationship is concerned, I continue to say in an unabashed and unapologetic way that the people of Nevis deserve their fair share of all resources that are available. The citizens on this island of Nevis are no less a citizen because they're on Nevis. And I will stand by that. I will die with that. That remains uncontroverted in my view. I am firm in my mind that that is the correct position. It is the only fair and reasonable and equitable position. And it will lead, in my view, to a better relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. And so it is my position. I was strident about it during the election cycle. I entered Team Unity willingly because that was offered, and that was a part of the historic Charleston Accord. And when Timothy Harris, the then Prime Minister, resigned from that position, I left Team Unity. That is how strongly I feel about the need for the people of Nevis to have their fair share. Prime Minister Drew never promised anything because there was no political accord between the CCM and the Labour Party. But since he has been there as Prime Minister and we were returned in Nevis by the popular will of the people of Nevis in December of 2022, we said that we had to sit down and work this through. He has agreed, he has set a mechanism in motion, and as I said at the last occasion, he said that he was expecting that report. So we look forward to seeing it and to resolving some of these financial issues once and for all.
Now, let me ask you this question. When the decision is made as to what the fair share would be, how would that come out? Would it have to be debated in federal parliament, or both cabinets could just shake hands on the agreement?
Well, I would prefer that we legislate something. So I would prefer that we go to the parliament and we legislate something, because as we would have seen with the Charleston Accord, which was a signed document between political parties, we then had a leader who then said, oh, that's not worth anything, that doesn't mean anything. Of course, after he had used that very document as a basis for becoming Prime Minister, he then renounced it and denounced it and said it really was a meaningless piece of paper. So I believe that lessons of the past, as I said, trust but verify. Let us go into Parliament and pass a law so that future, because what I'm doing now is not for me. It is not for me as Premier of Nevis. It is for the people of Nevis, our children and our children's children, having certainty in relation to how the proceeds in this country, the revenue in this country is to be distributed amongst the two governments and therefore, by extension, amongst the citizenry of the country. We have 2/3 or so of the people on St. Kitts, 1/3 in Nevis. It can't be right. In fact, the IMF was here recently and they disclosed to me that over the life of the CBI program, based on their analysis, Nevis has only got 11% of the returns. It means that St. Kitts has kept 89%, and these are net numbers. I want to make that clear. This is after they paid everybody and everything, that they kept 89%. And when we look at Nevis, we wonder how much more we could have done, Mr. Scarborough, if we had that fair share. Right? We wonder how much more we could have done.
I want to look now at the matter of constitutional reform, because this matter has been branded about several years now. The Nevis Douglas administration waited right down until the last year with 15-year term to try and bring about some changes and failed. The Team Unity administration spent 7 years talking about it and nothing was accomplished. Now the Dr. Juliet administration is also talking about it, but today all we have got thus far is lip service. How hopeful are you that at least some constitutional change will take place before this 5-year term is over?
I'm not very confident, and I'll be honest with you. I think that people like to talk about the Constitution and like to say that it needs change, but your history just now is instructive. That in 15 years of Labour, in 7 years of unity, and now thus far in another year and a half of Labour, we have seen no movement. But I'll go back even further than that. And I will say on the record, because I know that what I'm saying is true, that in 40 years of independence, not even a comma in that Constitution has ever been changed. So it tells me that there is not great hope that change will come. It suggests that people are, by and large, satisfied and happy with the Constitution as it currently stands, and I don't anticipate and I don't hold out much hope that substantive change is going to come. You will recall that we did attempt a fundamental shift when we sought to limit the terms of the Prime Minister to 2 terms, but that did not get the support of the then Labour parliamentarians, and we would have required a 2/3 majority support in the House. That sadly never came back, because the second time around we did have the 2/3 majority, but by then, of course, then Prime Minister Harris had his own agenda and didn't want that to come back to see the light of day. So, regrettably, I don't hold out a lot of hope. The Attorney General has said that he is interested in constitutional reform, and I am at least hopeful that he'll start the process. But certainly in my time here in government, I don't know that we will see any substantive changes to our Constitution.
Exactly. You would have said on many occasions that there are some changes that could be done by a simple agreement in the Parliament. Could you outline for our listeners and viewers some of the changes of which you speak and what exactly is needed to get those changes done?
Well, there's some changes. I don't want to get into the specifics of it because I didn't research that before I came here. But what I will say to you is that the Constitution has provisions that are entrenched at different levels. So there are some provisions. Take the secession clause, clause 113, forgive me, clause 113. To remove clause 113 from our Constitution, it is what is called a double entrenched clause. You need a special majority in the Parliament, but you also need a special majority, 2/3 in a referendum. And that 2/3 in a referendum in St. Kitts and Nevis is unique because you need 2/3 in a referendum on St. Kitts and you need 2/3 in a referendum on Nevis. So that, just by saying it, explains to you some of the difficulty. Secession, to achieve that, you need a 2/3 majority in a referendum. And once you go to a referendum, as we've seen all around the region, referenda tend to devolve into politics. So parties use it for politics rather than sometimes the issue at hand. So what I think we need to look at was an example of limiting the Prime Minister to 2 terms. That was being proposed by a simple act of Parliament, but with a 2/3 majority vote. So what you call a supermajority in the Parliament. There are those types of provisions which I feel we can adjust through that mechanism. Once, however, you get into the other provisions, you're now talking about a referendum, you're talking about a supermajority of 2/3 on a referendum, and we have had experience with that here in Nevis, as you recall, with the secession referendum, that it fell short by some 5% or so. So those provisions are doubly entrenched and are much harder to change. And so for me, we may well want to consider, if the constitutional pundits agree, whether we can simply repeal and replace the entire Constitution rather than tinkering with it around the edges. That will be a matter for some debate and some discussion.
Now, some boundary changes was put forward by the Nevis Administration, but was objected to by all of the opposition benches at the time. The Team Unity Administration and now Dr. Juliet Administration has been promising to do something about it. I know your committee was put in place to look at it, but as we speak, nothing has been done. Do you see any changes taking place?
Well, the committee is fairly new. So in fairness, I think the committee was only sworn in about 2 weeks ago. The committee comprises 2 members from the government benches, 2 members from the opposition benches, and from the opposition benches in the National Parliament, we have the Honourable Sean Richards and the Honourable Alexis Jeffers, and then a chairperson who is independent of the Parliament. I think Mr. Wycliffe Morton, if I recall. So that is how it's constituted. In fact, let me just clear up something now, because I heard some chatter by the NRP Nevis that they were left out of that Boundaries Commission. I want the public to understand that the only way one can be a member of the Boundaries Commission is if one is a member of the National Assembly. You have to win seats if you want to be on a commission like that. You can't go into a race and finish 3-0 and then make noise and say, you're not included. That is not the way the system is set up. The Constitution is very clear that 4 members of that commission must be sitting MPs in the national parliament. So I just want to make that very clear, that that is the type of red herring nonsense that you hear sometimes. You have to be in the parliament in order to be considered to be a member of that commission. So the members are 2 members on the government side, 2 members on the opposition side, and these are elected members, let me add that, and then an independent chair. Am I optimistic? I am, because I think that a lot of work has been done. I think that there's more work to do, but I do believe that we need to look at our boundaries, but we need to look at it in a way that is fair, and that is transparent, and that is defensible. We do not want a situation where all we engage in is gerrymandering, where one party is trying to use it to enhance their chances of success at the polls. That cannot be the basis. And that is not the basis that the Constitution contemplates that it should be done. The Constitution contemplates that it should be done for as much as possible to get a balance between seats. It is, for example, a matter for me always of some merriment that we had the Honorable Vance Emery, who led the CCM for 30+ years. And there's no doubt that Vance was a champion of St. George. And I used to smile all the time and say that Vance would emerge victorious in St. George with 700 votes. And when he emerged victorious in St. George with 700 votes, he has beaten his opponent sometimes by 300. So when you put what Vance's vote is and what his opponent's vote is, sometimes you get less than 1,000 votes. For me in St. John's, I had to be thinking about 15, 16, 1,700 votes sometimes in order to emerge the winner. My opponent in St. John's would usually get more votes than both candidates in St. George combined.
True. That's true.
So when you talk about representation, you have now to understand that the reason why the constitutional framers want a fairer number, a more equitable distribution of voters, is so that your seats are basically even. You can't have a seat like number 9. Number 9 is the second largest constituency in the entire country. Only number 8 is bigger, you know. All the others are smaller than Nevis 9. And so we need those adjusted, because I don't think that they have any bearing on reality. And at the end of the day, a man who gets 700 votes or 600 votes and is a winner has the same parliamentary authority as a man who has to get 2,000 votes to be a winner in that constituency. So we need to be able to adjust that.
Speaking of boundary changes, there was a time when former Premier, the late Honorable Vance Emery, was considering increasing the local seats here in Nevis from 5 to 7. Have you given any consideration to that idea, and will you need federal approval for such increase?
So the short answer is yes. In fact, if you look at our manifesto in the last few elections, this is a matter that we have committed to. Will I need federal approval? No. As I understand it, what we can do is set up a boundaries commission for Nevis to look at this matter, and it is a matter that certainly we will consult on and determine what is the best way forward. But I do feel, Mr. Scarborough, that the demands of modern government really require more talent at the table. Currently, we only have 3 seats in government, and we have 2 senators. So the affairs of the entire island of Nevis is entrusted to a group of 5 people who are sitting in cabinet. We really need to expand that to create greater opportunities for more people to participate in the process. And I think it is high time, 40 years on, for Nevis to have more than 5 seats. When you have a close election, as we did the last time, you end up with 3-2. Only 3-2, that really doesn't allow you. And if you look at my portfolio, I have some heavy matters that I'm required to. One man is dealing with all of this. You look at all of my colleagues and their portfolios, and we recognize that, you see, when you have critical things like healthcare, education, those potentially deserve a portfolio of their own. So we have to be able to look at it in a critical way and make some changes. And so I support, speaking for myself, the expansion of the number of seats on the island of Nevis.
I know that. Now, I want to take a look now at the integrity for compliance legislation, both at the federal level and the local level, because I'm having a difficulty understanding the reason behind having divisions filing the same thing twice. Could you shed some light on that first?
So I think that's an anomaly, and we've raised that with the Attorney General to say that really it makes no sense to do that. Certainly for those of us, like myself, who serve in two capacities, meaning we're serving in Nevis and we are also serving in St. Kitts. I serve in the Nevis Parliament and I serve in the St. Kitts Parliament. Then I have no qualms that persons like myself should file twice. But individuals, for example, who say are a member of NASPA or a member of NEVLEC, which has nothing to do with St. Kitts, I don't see the reason why they should be required to file over there as well as file over here. So I think it's an error. It is probably something that was an unintended consequence, and we are having that conversation now with the Honorable Attorney General to say, AG, you know, it makes no sense. What we really need to do is to ensure that the people who need to file in Nevis are filing with the Nevis Integrity Commission, and equally so in St. Kitts, and then the two commissions, which have already a high degree of collaboration, can speak with each other where necessary, subject, of course, to the usual confidentiality that binds them. So I believe that it's just a nuisance, and in my experience, once people feel annoyed about something, they are less likely to comply. And so it makes no sense to ask people to do things twice, because it means people are just changing a date and changing the addressee and doing it. It really doesn't make any sense.
Now, the Nevis Integrity in Public Life Act was established well before the Federal Act. While there may have been some teething problems here and there, nobody was stricken to the point where they were facing legal proceedings. Persons were encouraged as much as possible to do their filing, but the threatening persons with jail time or fine was never brought up. My question to you, therefore, is, does the Integrity in Public Life Act that was passed here in Nevis have the same penalties as that of the Federal Act?
So the penalties are similar. I don't have the two bits of legislation in front of me, but I think that the penalties are similar. But we adopted a different approach in Nevis. We adopted an approach of moral suasion. We invited people. We had some education sessions. And I think by and large, people complied. There have been some holdouts and some difficulties, and I don't know if you're aware, but some people did go to court over the matter. I believe it was a mixed bag. Some succeeded and some failed. I think that what it is, Mr. Scarborough, is people need to understand that the reason for integrity in public life legislation is to enhance our democracy. It is not intended to mind people's business. It is not intended for people to disclose things that they would prefer to be private. People have concern because it's a small island about confidentiality. Oh, when I tell the commission that I have $10,000 on the bank, I'm going to hear that on the street. I think now that we've had the benefit of 4 years of filing the Nevis, people should be confident that they haven't heard anything on the street. They haven't heard their business on the street. And I want to give commendations to the Commission in Nevis. I think they've really conducted themselves well in the circumstance because they understood that this was a challenge. And I think they've risen to that challenge in a very positive way. So for me, I think that it's about education and re-education and constant affirmation that the reason behind this legislation is not to get at anybody. The reason behind it is really to provide a check and to ensure that those who are entrusted with government finances, those who are put in positions in government and various statutory corporations, are not abusing those positions for personal benefit and personal gain. And that is all really what it's all about.
Folks, you're listening to Government at Work. My guest this evening is Premier the Honourable A.G. Brantley. We shall take a short break, and when we return, we shall continue with our discussions here on Government at Work.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Honourable, the last thing I want to touch on at the federal level is the recent debate that took place in the National Parliament pertaining to the productivity in the workforce here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I listened attentively and found the discussion very interesting and very encouraging, especially the presentation of the Honourable Eric Evelyn. I thought that he hit the nail right on the head. But like you said in your presentation, while it sounded good, it boils down to a matter of enforcement by those persons who are responsible for ensuring that the procedures are followed. I have always said that without consequences and repercussions, enforcement measures will be difficult. How does the OCC and Nevis Island Administration intend to ensure that, as was discussed and acknowledged in the Federal Parliament, that this doesn't continue to happen in public service, particularly here on the island of Nevis?
So, Mr. Scarborough, you've asked a very difficult question. In fact, this morning the Cabinet would have had a special meeting where we met with representatives from the Tony Blair Institute. Tony Blair, of course, being the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And that is one of the issues we put front and center, that we really need technical assistance with how we can reform our public sector to emphasize productivity. Let's face it, we have an archaic public service with rules that were designed by the British many, many decades ago, rules that have not really gone through too much reformulation. Public servants understand that the process to discipline them is an increasingly and incredibly difficult process. And I think as a result, a lot of people flock to government because they feel that, listen, in government I could do as I like. You graft the politics onto that, where some who are supporters of a particular party either decide they won't work because their party is not in power, or even sometimes their party is in power, they decide they won't work, or they will take certain privileges to which they're not entitled because it is their party that is in power. So you get it both ways. True. I think that at the end of the day, my message to our people is that they must at all times do their best, particularly our public servants. And you realize what the word said, public servant. It is service that you're engaged in. And when the public comes in and the public does not get the service that the public feels that they ought to get, given the fact that many of us seem to forget that it is a public's tax dollar that pays all of us, that it is important. And I have said it before that we see, for example, now, again because of the availability of jobs, a lot of public servants who are working in the private sector in the evenings, at the restaurants, at the bars, and the hotels. And the standard of service that they give you in the private job is sometimes far better. I have had scenarios where people are telling me they must leave their government job early because they can't be late for their second job. And these are the things which tell me that we can do better if we put our minds to doing better. And so I think we need reform. We have engaged, as I said just this morning, with the Tony Blair Institute. It is an ongoing conversation as to how we can go about it. But I think the civil service and the public service needs to be reformed from top to bottom. How it works, how it functions, how we deal with persons who are clearly bent on being unproductive. My administration has emphasized training, and I want to commend Mrs. Shanola Gill, who's at our HR office, and our prominent secretary in HR, both the previous Mr. Elliott and the current Mr. Barrett. They have really emphasized training. But for me, training without then putting into practice what you have learned is of no value. So we really need a system where people are more accountable. I know I got myself into a lot of political hot water when I criticized the fact that our governments keep giving double salaries year after year. Many public servants got upset with me because as far as they're concerned, this is free money, they're supposed to get it. And I want to yet again explain my position. It is not that I'm against persons getting a benefit, but my view is that you should seek to benefit those who are actually productive. Because when you benefit everybody, then those who are not being productive get the same benefit as those who are being productive. It then becomes a disincentive for those who are being productive. Now, Mr. Scarborough, if I come to work on time every day, I give of my best, I go the extra mile, I stay the extra half hour to finish my work, and my coworker comes late every day, takes an extra hour for lunch, leave early, always sick, and when Christmas comes, they get the same double like me. Well, after a while, I'm going to say, well, there's no value in me. doing well. So I'm saying that that is what we need to look at. We need to link pay to productivity, pay to performance. Once we start to do that, once people understand, hey, if I perform, I can get a bonus. There's an incentive for me to perform. I think that we start to see a turnaround.
That's what happens in
Right?
the private sector.
That's what happens in the private sector. You get paid for performance, right? If you want that extra cherry on top, you work for it. And I think that is what we need. This system where we reward the good, the bad, and the ugly. We reward mediocrity the same way. It makes no sense. And that was really what I was trying to get at. And I believe that people who are reasonable and right-thinking people will understand the point that I'm making. Because using those two workers as the example that I've used, that worker who works hard is going to be demotivated.
I know they understand clearly what you're saying, but all they're saying is some extra money.
Well, you know.
But I maintain that some form of consequences has to be part of that whole setup, because that's what happened in the private sector. That's why they work with that, because they know if they don't turn up, what would happen? You know, but in the public sector is a different thing. Honorable, geothermal energy discussions and negotiations continue at the federal level. The federal government has shown its full support behind it fully. This project shows their support behind it so much so that persons are referring to it as a federal project, expressing some concerns, and some are comparing it to the film industry developers who ultimately left us and went to St. Kitts. What assurance can you give them at this time that the NA is indeed fully in control of this project?
I think our people need to just take a deep breath and relax. First of all, they have competent leadership in Nevis. I don't say that lightly. I say that because I am Nevisian through and through. It is erroneous to compare this to the film industry, because the film industry, people got up and went where they wanted to go. Geothermal cannot get up and go anywhere. Geothermal is a natural resource that God has blessed the island of Nevis with. The reason why the project is a national project and a federal project is because we have agreed that the project will be harnessed for the benefit of the entire country. And we have said to the federal government that there's value in the people of St. Kitts also accessing cheaper, cleaner energy from the Nevis geothermal energy resource. It is actually better for us from a developmental point of view. Because when we talk to developers, they say if it's just Nevis that you're talking about, then the price is likely to be a lot higher because they don't have the benefits of any scale. The economies of scale are lost. When you add St. Kitts now to the mix, you're talking about a much larger plant, a much larger distribution base, and a much larger group of consumers over which you can recoup your investment. So it's a win-win-win for everyone. The Prime Minister and I have spoken about this matter, and what we're looking at is the federal government standing behind this project in terms of the financial side of things. Recall, Mr. Scarborough, it's the financing that has kept us back all these years. So if they can bring financing to the table, if they can bring the Saudi fund to the table, if they can bring the CDB to the table and others, because of the fact that they are the federal government and constitutionally they are the entity that engages with these organizations, then for me, everybody benefits. I have no difficulty in geothermal energy from Nevis being available to the people of St. Kitts. Same way Polymango from Nevis make its way to St. Kitts. We are one federation, and we have to start to think in that context. So I don't want people to see this as something being given away, because I'm not in the business of giving away anything. I'm in the business of being at the table and saying, let us do this together, where everybody can benefit from it. And that is what we are hoping to do. And so that is what is afoot at the moment. We have not had any recent movement. I believe we are at the stage now where we are still bidding for the drillers or the production wells to come. But the CDB is going to be here in the coming week, and they are coming specifically to finalize that process. And so we anticipate that we will have some movement on it. But I want to say, look in the camera and say to the people of Nevis, you have absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Whatever we're doing for the best benefit. And as I say to people all the time, sometimes people want to hold on to 100% of nothing. It's better sometimes to have a smaller percentage of something, meaning that when you share it, and you share the risk, and you share the burden of it, you also share the benefit of it. And that to me is better than saying, this thing belongs to me, but you can't get it out of the ground. right? We have been saying it belonged to me and we can't get out of the ground for 20 years. So let's try a different approach. Let's partner with our sister, St. Kitts, and let's benefit and say that the people of Montserrat City in Nevis can get geothermal just like the people of Molyneux in St. Kitts. All right? And that is the approach that we're taking at this point in time. It also, I want to say on geothermal, that it is the pathway to us achieving the sustainable island state that the Prime Minister has been championing. Because without geothermal energy, it's not going to happen. So really there is a win-win-win. There is every need for St. Kitts as well to benefit from this resource that God has blessed the island of Nevis with.
I want to focus your attention now on matters pertaining to Nevis specifically. The upcoming Cultural 50th anniversary celebration, that time is approaching fast and thousands of persons are expected to assemble here in the island of Nevis for this historic event. Some persons are expressing some genuine concerns about the demand for water and electricity during the period in question. How confident are you that both of these two important sectors will be able to withstand the load that both of them will be asked to carry?
Electricity is no problem. We've invested in electricity to the point where I don't think that there's any issue at all in relation to electricity, barring some catastrophe or some catastrophic breakdown of equipment. We have no problem in terms of the supply of electricity. Water is a problem and is a concern because, as you know, we're getting less and less rainfall. Our aquifers are replenishing at a low rate, and as a consequence, we're not getting the flow from our wells as we are accustomed to. We are addressing that in a number of ways. We've already signed a contract for additional drilling. We're going to be doing an additional 9 wells on the island. We've done that with a Trinidadian company. In fact, yesterday in the cabinet, the Honorable Spencer Brand, our minister, would have reported that mobilization has started, and we anticipate that the drillers will be on island in the next few weeks. If that is the case, then we are hopeful that we could have some additional water in the system by Culturama. Secondly, we're working on a small desalination plant in the St. James's area. That is not going to be a game changer because it's a small pilot project, but that is a gift from the United Arab Emirates, and we anticipate that that too should be coming online within this summer period. We continue to say to our people, however, that they must conserve water, and they need to be able to help us and help the system to be more sustainable by not wasting water. So a lot of people, in terms of little things like when you're brushing your teeth, you turn off the water until you need it. When you're soaping yourself in the bath, you turn off the water until you need it. Do you have leaks in the house? You'll be amazed how just a drip, drip, dripping pipe can waste hundreds of gallons of water every cycle. So we continue to encourage our people to, you know, water the lawns less, wash the cars less, etc., and to conserve water. Having said all that, we are still prayerful that we'll get rain, because we anticipate that it will be a struggle, this Culturama on the waterfront. But we are, as I said, working towards a plan. The only issue for us now is how quickly we can execute on that plan. So that is where we are. We're not sitting back. We recognize there's a challenge, and we're trying to confront that challenge. But just so the people of Nevis understand, because our people are very critical people, that all around the region right now, we're experiencing the same problem. I saw an article yesterday which said that in St. Vincent, the rivers are drying up. In Trinidad and Tobago, they're having water issues. We know the crisis that St. Kitts has been enduring for many years now. And yes, places like Anguilla are doing better because they've gone fully desalination. But then the cost of water in Anguilla is several multiple of what you're paying here. So we can go full desal as well, but the question is, will the people of Nevis be willing to pay 10 times what they're paying for water now? I think I know what the answer to that is. So, given that, I'm asking our people to bear with us. We are trying to solve this problem.
Another concern that has been raised is that the homicide crimes is once again on the rise in our federation. Fortunately for us here in Nevis, we remain relatively peaceful and quiet. For the past several years, Culturama has been relatively crime-free. However, with the uptake in homicide in our federation, what measures have been put in place here in Nevis, especially in light of the fact that we're expecting thousands of returning nationals and visitors alike to assemble here in Nevis for the period in question?
Well, I think in fact, I would say the last 10 or so Culturamas have been incident-free. So we have had a good track record. I believe I want to go on record to commend the police, the Division C, which is here in Nevis, but they usually would roll out what they call a policing plan for large events like Culturama. And they would buttress the security forces with colleagues from St. Kitts, both from the Army and from the police force. So I really anticipate, Mr. Scarborough, that we're up to the task. That based on what I've seen in the past, at the level of deployment, we also will by then have far more surveillance in terms of CCTV deployed across the island. In fact, we are in the process now of installing additional CCTV along the island main road. So we anticipate that we will be ready, and I have every confidence in our security forces that they will be able to handle the situation here on the island of Nevis. What you describe is a tragedy, what we're seeing, particularly over in St. Kitts. My heart and prayers go out to those families who have been affected. And I continue to appeal to our people, especially our young people, to stop with this violence. It really benefits no one. And what we're seeing is retaliation, tit for tat. You kill my dog, I kill your cat. It makes no sense. And the only thing I think that it ends up to, people end up in jail or they end up in the cemetery. Neither place is a nice place. I haven't been to the cemetery, I haven't been to jail, but from what I could see and understand, no one of us want to end up in either place. So our young people, they have a life ahead of them. You go out there, you have young children, you have young siblings, you're at an age where you should be at your most productive. Sometimes at my age now, I say, I wish I had 20 years ago. I wish I had, that youth, vim, vigor, and vitality that used to have. So for our young people just to throw away their lives over what? Somebody diss me. Somebody watch me the wrong way. Or that person come from this neighborhood. It really makes no sense. I really want to appeal to our youngsters to put down the gun and start to function in a way that brings credit to them and to their families.
Now, Honorable, according to the weather experts, this year's hurricane season is likely to be very active, a very active one. Of course, we have no control over anything like that. Pinnis Beach, with all of its development, is expected to be a height of activity during this year's 50th anniversary celebration. How concerned are you about this year's weather prediction, not only in regards to the Pinnis development, but for all aspects of our economy, especially tourism?
Well, clearly, Mr. Scarborough, I am concerned every year. I tell people that from the 1st of June, when the hurricane season starts, most of us aren't bending knee until November. So we have no control over it. The climatic conditions and the byproducts of climate change show that storms are getting more frequent and more violent. St. Kitts and Nevis has been blessed by God, that in the last decade or so we have not had a direct hit. And I'm prayerful, not only for us but for our neighbors, that this year, despite the predictions, that we will not have any direct hits. We can have storms, and we have had storms which stay out at sea. And I'm hopeful that that remains the case. But I will be lying to you if I said to you that I was not fearful. I'm fearful every year, because I want our people to understand that one storm can drive us and our development back 20, 30 years. Because one storm can wipe out our infrastructure, wipe out our hotel stock, wipe out our airport. So we really need to pray that God will spare us, but even as we pray, we also need to prepare. And so I have every confidence in Brian Dye and the team. They have done an excellent job over the years there, the Nevis Disaster Management and Response Team. We will, this week, we're launching our dispatch, 911 dispatch system, which will be a state-of-the-art system that we're doing in Nevis as a pilot project, and hoping that we could roll it out nationally if the federal government and St. Kitts comes on board with that in terms of rolling it out. But we are putting things in place, Mr. Scarborough. We are praying but also preparing. We say we pray for the best and prepare for the worst. But I'm asking our church leaders, who I call upon all the time, to pray for us and begging the Lord to intervene, because really and truly there's nothing that we can do as a government to prevent a storm from coming. We can only pray it misses us, and if it hits us, we can pray that we are prepared to at least pick up the pieces. And I also use the opportunity to appeal to our people, because our personal preparation is also important. preparing at home, make sure we have the necessary supplies, make sure we know where emergency shelters are, and make sure we do the necessary things, cleaning up our yards, cleaning down overhanging trees and the like. All of those are important. Right now, if you go around the island, Mr. Scarborough will realize that we are cleaning our guts and we're making preparations. But we're making preparations hopeful that we don't need those preparations. So that is where we are, and I can only pray and hope that we have no direct hit by any storms this year, because I think that will set us back considerably at a point where the island is definitely on an upward trajectory.
The Cultural and Home Assistance Program, will give us an update on that.
So the last time I checked, I was told that we had about 50 or so applicants. I'm continuing to encourage people to apply. What this does, it affords you the opportunity to improve the aesthetics of your home. So if you want to paint, if you want to change your windows, etc., the idea is really to encourage you. You want to fence, and we are offering you duty-free, and we're offering you the custom service charge off. The only thing you'll pay is a 17% VAT. So the government is partnering with persons. So all those business owners in Charlestown, for example, whose buildings could use a little lift, the idea is that for Culture Arm, and especially as we expect thousands of people to be here, that we really have the best representation of the island. We have launched the Best Village competition. We are doing a lot of different things to encourage our people to invest in the beautification of the island and of their surroundings. In addition to that, we will shortly start our collection of abandoned vehicles around the island. We're partnering with an investor who's coming in, and we're going to crush those and export them. Tomorrow, Mr. Scarborough, we are exporting our first batch of plastic for purposes of our recycling program. So we have been collecting plastic bottles, we have been baling them, and tomorrow we make history on this island. We will be exporting a barge full of plastic. These are the types of developments that we've been engaged in. So we're encouraging our people to come on board, to keep Nevis clean. Cleanliness, we say, is next to godliness. Keep us clean, keep us beautiful. And so this program was intended to incentivize people to do exactly that. So far, as I said, the pickup has not been as robust as I would like, but the last I checked, we had about 50 or so successful applicants. Let me be clear, because people are coming saying, I want to build on to my house and I want to change all my furniture. It is not intended for that. The only people we are considering who are changing furniture and the like are people who have guest houses, people who have apartments for rent, and who are registered and have their business license. Those we will consider. But if you're simply in your private home and say you want to change your furniture, you want a new television, this does not apply to you. So tell me you're going to paint the outside of your house, definitely you're going to benefit. Tell me you're going to get some fencing to fence your house, you're going to benefit. Tell me you're going to change your outdoor windows or doors, you're going to benefit. But other than that, really, this is intended just for the aesthetics.
I am happy that you outlined that clearly, because I was asked to ask you by somebody who knew I was going to be interviewing you this evening, whether you have to approach planning to expand what you're going to put on in your house.
Yeah, well, you have to approach planning, but not for purposes of the culture arm enhancement. It's a different program, yes.
They could get the enhancement and then
No. So you'd have to think. And then just for clarity, that the process is to go to the Ministry of Finance, and they will guide you through what you need to do.
Okay. So I want to go back to the export of the plastics. What time does that take place? And from where, or which point? From Long Point?
So it will happen from Long Point. Tomorrow, I think there's a ceremony, if I recall. I think it starts at 10 a.m. And it will be at the Long Point landfill. And what we're going to have there is, we have been baling plastics for quite some time. So we have several tons of plastic. But what is going to be important is that tomorrow, the milestone achievement for us is that we will be shipping it away from the island of Nevis. And that, I think, is very significant. I want to go on record to thank the Republic of China, Taiwan, because they have really been our partners and held our hands in relation to this project. But I think it's a proud moment. Andrew Hendrickson, our general manager at the Nevis Solid Waste Management Authority, has done an excellent job. So I want to commend him, commend the board, commend the entire team, and I believe that tomorrow is going to be a significant milestone for the island of Nevis.
Honorable, we have had two consultations on the airport project. Any idea when the third one will be on?
I don't have a date, but I anticipate it will happen shortly. I think the expectation was that we'll be able to go to each of the parishes.
Yes.
The Honorable Alexis Jeffers, I know, has been working assiduously with the team to get all of the designs. In fact, if you went to the first one, which did not go as we would have liked, then you compare that to the second one, you realize that much more information was available. By the third one, we continue to provide information as we build out. We are in the final stages of the land acquisition and negotiations, and we anticipate that hopefully by the next time we have the town hall, we can announce. The developers are saying to us that it is possible to start the project even before we've acquired all of the lands, right, to start some of the infrastructural work. And so we're looking to see what we can do as quickly as possible. We are ready to move. We want to move on this project. We think it's, for Nevis, is going to be a project of huge significance for the next 20, 30 years for this island. And so we're asking again for the public support in relation to this project.
Speaking of project, electricity, we recognize that the world market is increasing again. The oil is going up, and we're starting to hear some complaints about the local charges here in Nevis. What effect is that having on your
So let me go back in time, because in early 2022, if we recall, the Nevis Island Administration, the Cabinet, took a decision to remove the fuel surcharge from all domestic consumers and to cap it at 65 cents for commercial consumers. This was one of our responses to COVID, because we recognized that people were still in crisis and a lot of people were struggling. Mr. Scarborough, it has wrecked our finances from the NIA, because while people were rejoicing and saying, oh, my bill is less than half what I used to pay, the reality is that we had to subsidize that. And so it has put us as the NIA in jeopardy. It has put NEVLEC in jeopardy. We have gone back to the drawing board and we say we do not want to introduce the fuel surcharge, but we need to come up with a mechanism where we can better share the burden. So we want to provide a subsidy, but we can't provide a 100% subsidy that we've been providing. And so what we asked NEVLEC to do was to look at the tariff. The tariff itself, which is the base rate, has not been reviewed in several decades. So we say look at the tariff and see whether or not there's any room there. So NEVLEC has come back with a tariff adjustment. So the fuel surcharge, which was like an accordion, that we're not going to go back to, but we want to adjust the basic tariff. So there will be some adjustment there which will lead to some increases in persons' electricity bill. We're asking people to offset that by conserving electricity. So your bill is really going to be within your control in terms of how much you pay. But we could not continue to carry the full load of this subsidy, because it was really doing too much damage to our finances in circumstances where, even though we were collecting more revenue because the economy is performing better, we were spending all of that revenue in one place. So we had no money left over to do what we need to do in health or in education or in infrastructure. People are calling me on a daily basis, I need my road fixed. There was no money left over. So we are saying, let us share that burden. So we will still, I want to emphasize, we will still be providing a subsidy, but that subsidy will be lower than what we are currently providing. And we are asking our people to understand, but also saying to our people that they can control to some extent by conserving electricity and doing some of the things. Some people run the AC all day, all night, right? In fact, we have learned based on our research that since the price went down, because when we removed the fuel surcharge, people were paying a fraction of what they used to pay. Some people started to run the AC all day, all night. Who didn't have AC before, install them now. So the idea was, oh, it's cheap now, so let us use more. So I'm saying to our people that we need to get back to conserving, and you can help yourself by determining how much your bill is, by how much you conserve.
Finally, Honorable, I want to ask you about Culture 50 and your participation. Over the years, you have participated in the long jam coming down from Gingerland. What part will the Honorable Mark A.G. Brantley be playing for this 50th anniversary?
Well, I will tell you, Mr. Scarborough, I'm out there walking every morning. I'm trying to get myself ready for the long jam, because I hear Casanova is coming back. The original long jam is coming back. Core has done an excellent job over the years, but you could only have one original, and that is Casanova. So I am understanding that is the case. In fact, Curtly and the guys have been working in the studio. They've sent me some songs already. I can say publicly that I've committed to providing some sponsorship to them, because I think it's a really unique experience for Nevis Culturama, and I give them the credit, going way back when they started this, and Core deserves some credit as well for continuing that tradition. But I think that jam from Gingerland to town has become an institution, and to celebrate 50 years of Culturama, I really feel that thousands of people are going to be on the road. Beyond that, I'm not a big reveler. I've never been, but of course I intend to go to the shows and to support the shows. I think we have the right man in charge of culture, who's the Honorable Eric Evelyn, because that's up his street. He's the dancing minister. So these are the kinds of things that he loves, but I certainly hope and pray that I am able to be in the long jam for Culturama 50.
Okay. Here's a suggestion. Let me put this to you, because I put it to the Honorable Minister and of course the Chairman of Nevis Culture, Mr. Antonio the Library. Is this suggestion coming from some members of the general public that Charlestown is becoming too small for that juvenile running wind up? And persons are suggesting that maybe we should look at the possibility of taking it to the MGR Park. That's just the finality.
Well, I hear the talk and thing, but you know, one of the problems with the MGR Park is what state the MGR Park going to be in after. That is always a concern, because the park is really intended to be, you know, a place of leisure, and we're trying to maintain it at a certain standard. I believe that events such as those will really do tremendous damage to the park. Even when we've had some fêtes there like Tropics, we have been very hesitant because we want to preserve that. The park, of course, will be available. People are having events. We believe it will be a hive of activity, especially for things like the food fair and things of that nature. Mango Fest is coming. That's going to be there. But the truth is, Mr. Scarborough, I feel that in a way Charlestown is small, it's congested, but that's part of the appeal. You know, when people are together and that revelry, I think that it works for us. So we're hopeful that things can go well, and we look forward to welcoming home our visitors and welcoming home as well our brothers and sisters from St. Kitts who come in large numbers each year to support Culturama.
Yes. Well, Honourable, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening. So it's a pleasure having you on the program. Your final words for our listening and viewing audience.
My final words are to thank you, of course, for the opportunity. I don't come as often as I should, but I do try. And I want to say to the general public that some great things are happening on Nevis. We've opened our water taxi facility now in terms of not just the pier, but the reception area. We've put some beautiful signage. We'll shortly be working on the parking lot. We've acquired land for the parking lot. And the MGR Park. The final touches are now being put on that, and we expect that Pinnies will become the #1 place in the Federation for leisure and for entertainment. We expect, I mean, what we're doing down there is nothing short of remarkable. I want people to come and see it for themselves. We're repairing NEPAC, which has suffered for years in terms of leaks and all of that. We're spending quite some money there. And I want to thank again the government and people of the Republic of China, Taiwan, who have partnered with us. And I want to thank Prime Minister Drew, because he has volunteered to share resources that the Office of the Prime Minister would get annually from Taiwan with us. And because of that, we were able to get just under 5 million EC dollars, which is what we're using to do the repairs at NEPAC, to do the work that we're seeing happening at the cultural village and the cultural complex, and also to do some of the water drilling, going back to the issue of water that we raised. So we're working hard. I believe that our people are the beneficiaries, and for me, once our people are happy, I'm happy. It means I'm doing my job. And so I say thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward certainly to another chance when we might be able to engage.
Of course. Folks, we have come to the end of another edition of our Government at Work program. Join us again next week when we shall do it all over again. Do enjoy the rest of the evening's programming, and have a pleasant night's rest. Good night.